Okay. So welcome everyone to the Passion and Possibilities in Birth video series. I am Charlotte Kanye from Birth Essence, and I support women to be confidently themselves in birth and in life. And this series is to support women to really find all the information and be inspired about all the things you can do to support yourself to have a wonderful birth experience, and the people whose highs and whys, how you might go about that. And today, to speak to me is Awen Clement from Wild Magpie, and who is an independent celebrant among many things, a mother of four, an independent celebrant. You organise weddings, you organise many things, and one of the things you do is work with women on their journey to motherhood, among many other things. So welcome, Awen, this morning.
Hi.
It's really lovely to have you here to speak with us.
Yeah, thank you for asking me.
Yeah, I know you do so many wonderful things, and one of the things that you do is celebrate all the rites of passage from birth to death, right the way through funerals, weddings, and of course within that, giving birth is a very important rite of passage.
Absolutely.
And so there's so many things we could talk about, but I'd love to start about talking about maybe a little bit about yourself and why you're so passionate about supporting women in this way.
Yeah, I mean, it's been part of my life for a really long time now. I was raised in a pagan family. My mum is pagan, so I was raised in the goddess tradition. So menstruation and birth and everything is something that, has always been, sacred to me. That's what I was taught from a very young age, that, the woman's blood and birth and feeding babies, all of this stuff, that all of it is, a sacred thing and a sacred time, and, its connection to goddess or spirit, or however you might want to refer to that. It's different for everybody, but that's how it is for me. And then when I had my own daughter 18 years ago now, it's quite scary to be a mum of basically somebody who's just turned adult, but when I had her, and then experiencing it for myself and wanting to experience it as a sacred thing. I was lucky I had my mum around, and she did, really support me and everything. But there was kind of a gap. There weren't people around me. There wasn't a circle around me. And I did quite a lot of sort of reading and research. The internet was just really in its infancy and just starting to become something around then. And I sort of learned about doulas and this sort of thing. And I sort of thought, there should be, more, for women around this time. Why doesn't everybody think it's this, sacred special thing? And sort of, and meeting other mothers then, because once you become a mother, of course, you meet other mothers, and you find there's all these women who have had quite difficult times, actually, and that, being pregnant and having babies, isn't this, wonderful thing that it really should be, and once was, and we've gone from, sort of once upon a time really honouring women and their journey through childbirth, and seeing it as something really important, and as a rite of passage, that it intrinsically changes you as a person, to this kind of, oh well, it's just normal, isn't it, and you've just got to get on with it, and 2 minutes after you've given birth, you kind of ought to be back in an ordinary body and getting on with ordinary life, and it's just kind of skated over sort of completely, and everybody makes far more fuss of the baby than they do of mum. And it just seems a terrible shame that sort of that big change that has happened for that woman in becoming a mother is just completely ignored. So yeah, I guess that's kind of why I'm passionate about it, because
you went on to have another 3 children, didn't you? You have 4
I did,
children.
yes.
As you did that, how did you change? How did it change for you, the way you started to celebrate becoming a mother as you gained more experience?
To be fair, with baby 2, I perhaps didn't so much, because at that point I suddenly, I'd moved away from my mum. I was living in a city. I barely knew anybody. I'd only been here a couple of years. And my husband is wonderful. And I had a great birth experience with Tyler. I was very lucky, and I had a really lovely, gentle, natural birth experience with him. But was trying to work and was trying to be sort of wife and mum, and just sort of live normal life. And I had quite bad postnatal depression with Tyler as well, my second child. So less so with him, I think. But then by the time I got to baby number 3, Eleni, who's 8 now, and I, by then, having been here for some years, had women around me, had sort of friends, and sort of wider circles of women. And I was much more sort of craving that connection with women, and to celebrate it. And by this time I'd done a lot more reading and research, and actually the sort of these concepts of sort of spirituality and childbirth, and it being something important, that movement was really starting to rise, I would say, sort of about 8 years ago. There were sort of some books coming out, and things that had been missing sort of the 10 years sort of previously, that I had been looking for then, that weren't around then, were starting to sort of come into being. And Facebook was really becoming a thing, and so suddenly this ability to sort of connect with other people and explore this stuff kind of was really becoming something. So yeah, Eleni's birth, again, lovely, lovely, birth, very quick. But even with her, I didn't quite sort of get to do it perhaps as much as I would sort of tell other people that that they should. It's easy, isn't it, to sort of you to tell everybody else how wonderful things are, and they should sort of be doing something. Then you never quite manage to do it for yourself. You never quite make the space or the time, or give yourself the permission to have all the things that you tell everybody else they should have. But by the time I got to having Connor, my fourth and last baby, who's now 5, I did approach it very differently, and I had a much more connected pregnancy with him, and spent quite a lot of time in sort of shamanic circle with him. I journeyed into the womb and met him before he was born. I had a mother blessing at like sort of 36 weeks pregnant with him. You were there with a very, very young, your baby number 2. It's hard to work it out, isn't it? Sort of to remember who was who at what point. And because I'd helped you with Idris's placenta and this sort of thing, and I'd been trained as a hypnobirthing teacher by this point, and learnt to create remedies out of placentas, and so my whole sort of being really was much more sort of centered, much more clearly in this kind of sense of birth and motherhood, and all those pieces around it being sacred. So I was more able to give that to myself, and I had people around me that wanted to give it to me as well. So I'm not sure if that even answered the question.
If I can summarise, what I'm hearing is it's been a real journey from you, that you had a wonderful opportunity as a child to have rites of passage celebrated for you because of your background in the pagan world. Rites of passage were honoured, and women and mothers were honoured in a different way than we often see in our society. But still, when it came to your birth, and you were quite much younger for the first one, it was a bit of a culture shock almost, that there was a gap for you, and that continued a little bit with your second, as you learned more things, because you'd moved away from that background, so you were kind of in the wilderness like many of us are, where we're not living close to family, or they don't have that awareness either. So then you got an experience in a way of what many women have, where they haven't got that background, although you still had in you the knowledge that it could be different from this. There's the sacred element, there's that, you had that knowledge in you, so you felt the gap really strongly, I think, and then you started to put in place. You were also training at the same time as practical things that supported your knowledge, with doula training, hypnobirthing training, all these other areas, and moving into the celebrancy that joined up all the dots for you with all those rite of passages. By the time you got to Connor's birth, you put all that in place for you. And I think you brought up a lot of important points, that as women we often are conditioned to put ourselves last and not to honour ourselves, even if we're telling everyone else to, because we're looking after everyone else. We know what to do, we know what's the thing to do, we're looking after everyone else, and then to do it for ourselves is a big leap. And this is part of what this interview is about. You did that by your journey through, and I know I would love for women not to have 4 children.
Yeah, exactly. It's why did it take me,
to learn that.
Even for somebody rooted in the background I was rooted in, when I got my first bleed, I was celebrated and given jewellery and all this stuff. And yet it took till baby number 4 to really, truly
embody it.
Yeah, to kind of get into that place and to have all those things and those people and those experiences.
And it makes a real difference, doesn't it? Your as a healing, and it can heal backwards to the other ones when and throughout the family, when you take that time and you honour yourself. I matter as a mother, I matter as a woman, my birth matters, the child, it's saying that everything matters, and then you can choose. That is really, it is wonderful to hear as well that you have that journey. It's a beautiful journey. And I'd like to pick up on the mother blessing that you mentioned, because I was at your mother blessing and I was at a mother blessing, and this is kind of in contrast to the baby shower, which most people are more familiar with and have, where the focus is on the baby, presents for the baby, and a mother blessing is more focused on the mother. So I'd love you to tell the audience a little bit more about what is a mother blessing and why you might want to have one, organise one.
Yeah, so for me, again, something a concept I'd heard about, some years ago. Some people sometimes refer to them as blessing ways, although that's actually technically it's the wrong name. A blessing way is a Native American ceremony, but the name's been wrongly kind of co-opted.
Cultural appropriation.
Yeah, unfortunately, but the intention behind it is it is good. So we've hopefully most of us in this field have moved away from calling it a blessing way, but just for the sake of this I mentioned that because some people may have heard the phrase blessing way rather than mother blessing, but we tend to call it a mother blessing or a birth blessing. And it is exactly as you just said. It is about honouring the mother and honouring this transition into motherhood, this transition to being really a different person, because birth changes you completely. It isn't just a physiological thing that happens to you, and baby showers tend to be very focused on the baby and presence of the baby and everything, and that's lovely. And you can include elements of that in a mother blessing if you want to. But what we do with a mother blessing is we put the mother absolutely at the centre, usually in a circle of her closest women, her closest friends, maybe mother, sisters, these people, and say, you matter, and what you are doing, you are growing this life, this matters, and in birthing this life, you are an absolute embodiment of all that is divine and powerful and sacred, and I mean there's so many things you can do with a mother blessing, but certainly what happened at mine and some of the things we did at yours was it's an opportunity to make prayers or wishes. I mean it really depends on your personal language around this stuff, because everybody's different, and you don't necessarily have to be profoundly spiritual to take part in this and have a ceremony like this. But it's an opportunity to say to the mother, I hope you have an easy birthing. I hope that breastfeeding, is easy for you both, and that the milk will come easily and the placenta will come easily, and that you and your family will be happy, and that all will be joyful, all these sorts of things. We're very good in this country at writing people cards with lots of lovely sentiments in them, which is great, but there's something really powerful about actually verbally presenting them to the person, and and looking them in the eye, or touching. We used a lot of touching your mother blessing. We oiled your hands and your feet, and we oiled your belly, and really honoured this vessel, this body that was about to go through this immense journey. And we spoke wishes, and we tied strings onto a candle so that you could light this candle when the birthing journey began, so that you would feel all those wishes and all that sort of strength of all of those women sort of with you in that time. I've done blessing ceremonies, where we've done what we call the red thread, where you have a ball of red thread, a red wool, and you leave one end with mother, and then you pass it around the circle until it kind of comes back again, and everybody ties a piece of this red thread around their wrist as a symbol of their connection to the mother, and when she announces her labour, everybody cuts the thread then, so that it sort of sort of opens the way for the mother. It says, we are with you, but we allow nothing to hold back this birth now. I've done blessing beads, same sort of thing, everybody chooses a bead, puts a wish or a prayer into it, and it's put on a string to be a necklace or a piece for focus during the labour and the birth. We've done blending of herbs that can then go into a postnatal bath. The list goes on. There's so many little things, little gestures, treats, connections that you can make relevant for the woman, to just show that you really honor this place that she's in, and this journey that she's about to go on, and mother and child go on this journey together. It's you're two beings, you're sort of one being, but you're about to become two. And not only that, but the family around is potentially going from being just a couple to a couple plus baby, so 2 becomes 3, or 3 becomes 4, so there's an older sibling or more to be, and the whole family dynamic is about to quite dramatically change. I have a number of sort of friends and colleagues who do what's called family constellation work, and it's this sort of idea that sort of suddenly this constellation of people is fundamentally shifting, and we just don't really, as a culture, we don't give that any thought, really. A lot of people just don't. It's just, oh yeah, well, we're having another baby. Oh yeah, we're a family of 4 now, and it's quite casual, and for some people that may be okay, but actually my experience is that, and even amongst women who walk a sacred path, there is a lack of acknowledgement of this big thing that that they are either about to go through or have just been through, and it's all, oh, well, you've got a lovely baby and you're both hale and well, and that's kind of it, and there's no awareness or acknowledgement of this big seismic event that's just taken place within this woman and within this family. And because there's that nuclei of that family, of the mother, maybe the partner, maybe other children, but then there's other family and friends, and it's all an interconnected web. That one birth, that one baby, that it ripples outwards, in a much wider way than I think anybody ever quite gives it credit for.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. The family dynamic and the lack of acknowledgement, and also it's easy to just say in a sentence, oh, it's important to honour yourself. But I think even these small things, they might sound small, or lighting a candle or tying a cord, they are much bigger impact than it sounds for just saying, oh, we lit a candle or we tied a cord. For myself, experiencing it, as soon as women started to arrive, I was crying because these women had come for me. And there's no other time in my life, for me personally, and I think for many women, where I had organised an event for me, and it's even a birthday party. It's kind of like a fun up in there, and it's a way of you can hide out from yourself with that, because it's a party for everyone to celebrate your birthday. But this is like a party for you. It can be light and joyful, and it was joyful, but it's, for me, when it was like, these women are coming here to serve me, to look after me, to do things for me, and I'm doing nothing. No, but I didn't have to prepare the food, I didn't have to do any cleaning, or didn't have to organise the space. It was all done for me. That was part of it being like that. It wasn't, I'm organising the Mother Blessing and I'm going to do it all. It was all for me. And then the attention on me in such a specific way was really powerful for me personally, and I think for many women too. As you've said very, very well, that we don't acknowledge this, and it's huge. There are physical changes, emotional changes, spiritual changes, whatever you want to call it. The changes becoming a mother are enormous, and that postnatal depression is a big thing, as you mentioned. You've experienced it too. That I feel that having this kind of honouring during the pregnancy, the birth, afterwards, all times, can really support a woman through turbulent emotional changes or confusion. And we are vulnerable. We are more emotional in pregnancy, I think, more open to the shifts in energy. So I do think, for me, the Mother Blessing was something I'd wanted to do for the other children, but had held back on. Again, like you said, you can prescribe for other people. Are you doing it for yourself? The third one, I did it, and it was huge for me. I still think of it. I've got the pictures. It's a memory, a strong memory in a way that the birth is. And it was in the garden. It was lovely and sunny, and it is that powerful for me. It has a lot of power, and I'm sure that you've supported women and seen that transformation even within the Mother Blessing, because maybe something they've not done before, the ideas come on, and then when they do it, it's like, wow. And that the other thing you said that was important is the reflection back. When you can say your wishes alone in your bedroom, but having them reflected back with witnesses adds such power in the group energy to that.
Yeah, and I think also, women carry, even women who've birthed before, we carry a lot of fear and worry and tension, around giving birth and around, the unknown of it. Because even when you've done it before, every birth is different, so that there's always a degree of, I don't know how this is going to go. Is it going to be fast? Is it going to be slow? Is it going to be painful? Is it going to be easy? That's just the sort of immediate kind of stuff, and the Mother Blessing gives space to hold that woman wherever she is in that, without judgment, without criticism, without trying to say, oh, don't be silly, because we do that a lot with women. Oh, don't be silly, you're worrying about nothing, it doesn't matter, it'll be fine, oh, the midwives will do everything. And we take away the woman's own power in knowing that she can do this, that her body does know what it's doing, that no matter how the birth goes, that she can survive it. And I think in seating a woman in circle and in honouring her and in loving her, actually, is probably the thing I didn't say as well, because I know on for yours there was just phenomenal amount of love for you. And again, we don't say to each other as women, I love you. And I love you as you are now, and I will still love you as you will be afterwards, and no matter what happens, I will love unconditionally. That there is just this love. And the greatest antidote to fear, in my experience, and it's what's taught in hypnobirthing, and certainly something I've come across in other things I've learned about, is actually the biggest antidote to fear is love. And that bears out in the biology. The antidote to adrenaline is oxytocin, or always, always, always. So the more loved you can make a woman feel,
the more oxytocin,
the more secure she will be, and the more oxytocin she'll produce. And that can only be for the good, in terms of birthing and breastfeeding, and the mother blessing is wonderful, but then if we can then extend that postnatally, so that that immediately after birth, that love and holding continues. So like, I came and made you placenta remedies. I know somebody else came with soup and food for you and the family, and I know your mum came and helped to take care of the other children. So we did, we extended that love on and into those early days, and we held you and said, we see you, we see what you just did, we see what you've just been through, you just birthed a baby, wow, here, let us feed you, let us take care of you, let us take care of other things, so that you can just be as you are in this time, immediately after this birth with this baby, and just work out who you are now, and work out who this little person is, and work out how this feeding stuff works. Because even when you've done it before, it's different with every single baby, and some of them take to it like a duck to water, and some of them don't. And and there's so much going on, and I think actually it gets worse the more babies you have. The more people expect you to just know what you're doing, and it's going to, oh, you don't need any help. You've done it before. You're sorted. You don't need any help. Nonsense. Actually, the more babies you have, and I'm getting a little bit pointy.
No, you can go for it.
I'm getting a bit. The more babies you have, actually, the more you need it, because I think we do sometimes. We are more willing to honour the first time mother. We tend to. We see it in the first time mother a little bit more, because it's like, oh, it's your first baby, you've never done it before, and yeah, wow, isn't that a big thing? But then by the time you get to baby 4, it's like, oh, you've done it before, it's not anything new. Yeah, it is new. It is new every time. It is different every time. You become somebody different every time. You go from mother of 1 to mother of 2, from 2 to 3 to 3 to 4. And every birth is different and affects you in a different way. And your life changes in between. Who you are changes. I was a very different person, a very different mother at 18 when I had my first baby. And then I had long gaps with my babies. So 5 years between the first 2 and the second 2, and then 3 years between baby 3 and baby 4. So I've actually got a 13-year range. Between my kids of where I've born and birthed, and I'm a very different person and mother, even now, and I mean they're all growing up now, but certainly sort of, baby 1 to baby 4, just absolute poles apart of who I was inside myself and how I wanted to be as a mother, and this sort of thing. So you couldn't have, held me and honoured me in the same way the first time as you could have done the 4th time, because, and although you're not necessarily intrinsically, a different person, I still Awen, but we're all shaped by our experiences and our journeys through life, and all the things that happen to us, and how that shifts us in our core. And I think we do. I think we ignore mothers who've got more babies more than we even do first time mothers, and and that's bad enough. But I think we tend to sort of just think, oh, well, you've done it before. It's not really anything special anymore.
It's like loving someone. You don't stop when you've done it for half a day. It carries on. Love is in action. You can tell someone you love, and you can tell them the next day if you're thinking of your partner or your child. You wouldn't say you love them more. Well, I told you that last week, that I loved you. Surely you know that I still love you. You wouldn't think like that with a child. You know they need reassurance. You know they still need to be celebrated. You wouldn't say, well, I celebrated your artwork last year when you were 5. Now that you're 6, I don't need to celebrate it because I did that, right? Even though it's a different picture in front of you. And I hope that analogy makes it clear to people. You're a different person and the same person. And we keep celebrating each one and each activity, each milestone, each part of you. And we tend to have less space available with more children because we're more busy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yet more, and as you said, there's therefore a greater need to make that space, to take that space, to fill yourself up. So it's very important, definitely. And so let's see where we're up to. So what do you find most inspiring about actually birth itself, about the whole
I think probably much what I've been saying. It is witnessing this transformation of woman, and particularly seeing. I've been fortunate as a doula and as a ceremonialist, but to see women go from I don't believe I can. Oh, I did it.
Yeah.
Look at me, aren't I amazing? I did this thing. From I'm not feeding my baby properly. I don't think I can do this. To my baby's put on all this weight. Look what I've done. This is, I did it, and it's that seeing women go from I don't know if I can to I did. I can, I know I can, I did it. Yeah. And not only that, but literally I did it, not anybody else. Yes, I may have been supported, there may have been people that helped me, but it was me.
Yeah.
And that sense of empowerment and responsibility, and when you can kind of shine a light on it for some women and say, do you see what you just did?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, can you see how amazing you are? And they kind of go, oh, because nobody ever has. We don't shine the light on each other and say, look at you, you're awesome. I mean, that's just in ordinary, life, let alone when we birth a baby or when we succeed with breastfeeding. It's either completely ignored or totally taken for granted.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, it's like I say, it's seeing that internal change in a woman who, perhaps didn't give it credit for how it was going to change her, and then they come out the other side, and it's just all over them.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I love that you say that inviting the support in isn't the support doing it for you. So it's you say, I did that, and then the support is supporting you to know that you did that and to see it reflected, and it kind of is like a snowball effect, having that witness, and the support can make it so much smoother and so much so that you can realize what you're doing more, so then you can feel it more. And I love that it's still, however much support you get, you're still doing it, and you do it. So get as much support as you can so that you can do it more. It won't take away from your sense of achievement, because the kind of support we're talking about isn't taking over. It's witnessing, honouring, practical support as well, all kinds of different support, whichever you choose, which is your choice.
As much as anything, it's just having people around you that believe in you. Yeah. Even just one person that believes, yes, you can do this. I believe that you are capable of this. I believe you can do this without caveat, without qualification, without condition, without expectation. Just, I see you and I believe in you. And that can be phenomenal for some women, because it can often be the first time in their entire lives that anybody's honestly done that for them.
Yeah.
Which is just, and I think that's the thing. I think how we are around birth and birthing women is an unfortunate mirror of how we are with each other just in life. That we don't, as I say, we don't shine a light on each other and say how awesome we are. We don't look at each other and say, I believe in you. You know, and as you alluded a little while ago, we do it with our children. You know, we spend 18 years telling our kids how marvelous they are, and I believe in you, and you can do anything you want to do, and I think you're great, and I love you. And then they turn 18, and it's like, right, see you later. You're grown up now, bye. And it's like, what? Why do we suddenly, at the age of 18, stop needing that unconditional love and belief from the people around us? Why is it that we think that there's some sort of switch that gets flipped at a given point in adulthood that says that we don't need that same stuff that we give to our kids without question?
And I think if you hold that belief, sometimes it can prevent you from seeking the support, asking for the support, as if, you know, well, I'm the mother or the adult now, I should be able to do this.
Yeah.
Not a recognition to, as if it's not okay to need help. It's not stopping you from achieving. It's not a failure. It's a fact that support is good, and support is fun as well. I mean, one of the things about the mother blessing ceremony that I had with you, as we were talking, it was really fun. Yeah. As well, it's not like we're asking for support and it's going to be horrible. It's really, really enjoyable, and
it's the difference between acknowledging that something may not be easy. You know, we've fallen into a thing as a society of often painting birth as this very, you know, difficult, awful thing, instead of kind of going, no, it's not easy, but when well supported and well loved, it can be easier, you know, and there's no denial of the fact that it can be really hard. You know, it's a big thing, and when we underestimate what a big thing it is,
take the judgment off the fact that it's hard and separate hard from horrible, kind of.
Yes, exactly.
It might be even more hard for you, but that doesn't make any difference to whether it's joyful or empowering or strengthening. All those things that can interweave themselves in, and yeah,
completely. And there's an unfortunate kind of one-upmanship that sort of I see go on sometimes in circles, especially in younger women, unfortunately, where it's, oh, well, you know, I had this awful birth and these awful things happened, and then another mum goes, well, mine was worse and I had all this awful stuff. And there's this competition about how awful it is, and it's like, crikes, like, what is going on with these young women? And I do think it's this, we take away the you know, this love and belief in them, and you know, say, right, well, you're a grown up now and you've got pregnant, so you just get on with it and you'll be fine. And yeah, and then, you know, they have these difficult experiences, and because nobody went, yeah, it's going to be difficult, sweetheart, but it's going to be amazing too, they just hold on to the difficult bit and then spread that around and compete with each other about how difficult it was. And it just seems
sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's okay.
There's something you alluded to right at the beginning about this craving we have to be heard, to be seen, to be honoured, and I think perhaps particularly in the generation with orals, that's not happening. So then we're wanting to share our birth stories, which is so important, and sharing them in inappropriate ways and places, and the horrible bits which have got stuck, when actually, if, like with the mother blessing, and then, as you said, carrying it on with, like, I had a session with you afterwards to celebrate becoming a mother, and you can have them, like I had one at a year on to celebrate being a mother for a year and looking at what I've achieved and what I've done. There are places, so if there has been a trauma, that you can go and get that heard somewhere to release that and find the meaning in your story, even though it was traumatic for you, that makes you feel strong afterwards, and that is always possible no matter what's happened. But to prevent that even happening, the support, because you can get through anything when you've got these support, how things change. It's not that which is going to make it a horrible experience per se. So then the support coming in, and there's a place then in the kind of celebrancy that you do, where you're holding space for people with mother blessings, naming ceremonies, otherwise you're holding the space. there's an outlet for that energy, and we want the connection, we want the importance, that ritual. And that's what's missing in our society. And you're filling a gap there with the services that you offer, that people don't always know they have that gap. They know there's something, but they can't verbalize it. And this is one thing I hope this conversation will inspire in people listening, that when we talk about this, they recognize that gap in themselves and go, okay, what can I do to fill it? Do I have a mother blessing? Do I have something else? Do I just have a chat with some friends? Even, it can be at any level. What do I need? How can I fill this gap? And I think that then we can start having more positive stories to share, and places like we used to gather around campfires and share stories. Stories are so important in our lives, as teaching, as fun, as social events, and the birth story is the one you're really going to remember. So
and I think perhaps I should sort of caveat what I just said as, you know, it's not that we shouldn't share the difficult stories, because we absolutely need to have space, and we need someone or a circle of someone who can hold that, and that's what's missing for a lot of women.
It's the share it in the right place, right? Not to scare the new pregnant woman,
not just to sort of sit around with other mums and just, you know, pour out all this difficult stuff, and just sort of, you know, spread all this kind of difficult stuff around. And also, you know, often these women share these stories and have never heard a different story. They've never heard from somebody like you or me who had a really, really amazing time. Still not necessarily easy, because I wouldn't have said any of my births were easy, because they're not. You know, they are big transitions, but you know, they were still nonetheless, you know, amazing events for me. And I think we've become so ingrained with the kind of sharing the awfulness, and then setting up other people's expectations for awfulness, that we can't always hear the good stories. You know, people quite often will shut you out, because it's like, well, mine wasn't like that. I don't want to hear how good yours was, because mine was awful. And also, unfortunately, there's a tendency within the medical professionals, of, even when it was difficult or traumatic, of sort of saying, well, it's all right, you're all right now, baby's all right, you're both okay, you're going home, just leave it behind. And so women have this ball of stuff that they just don't know what to do with, and then also can't believe that it could be different another time. I mean, I know women who have had one baby and wanted more, and then didn't, because they could not bear to go through what they'd gone through the first time, but they didn't have somebody that could help them unpack what happened that time and show them.
Find someone. I know it's one of the things that you do and I do as well, the kind of birth story listening, or the freeing up of that trauma to release them into a freer place to do something different next time. There are many.
And it's never too late, I think, is the other thing. You know, your children could be grown and have children of their own, and you could still do healing work around some of this stuff if you're still carrying this stuff late in life. You know, it's never ever too late to in some way honor or resolve you know, this stuff. It's never too late to honor yourself as a mother. It's never too late to honor your birthing journey in some way. There's another ceremony that I do, that I've done with you. Some people call it closing the bones, other people call it postnatal sealing. There's a few different names, and again, it's a sensitive one, because it comes from sort of more indigenous cultures in sort of South America and Asia. But the concept being that you know, when a woman gives birth, she's wide open in every possible way, you know, deeply vulnerable, and using a lot of her power in order to, you know, bring this child into the world. And what the sealing ceremony does is it helps the woman to sort of bring all that kind of back in to herself, and to kind of close everything, you know, sort of back down again, and call back sort of anything that sort of you know, sort of stepped away from her. And had some really powerful experiences of doing that with women, you know, much later, not necessarily so immediately after birth, you know, within the first months or year. I've done it with women years later, because, you know, they've been walking around, you know, adrift and with power loss and just this sense of uncertainty about who they are and who they've been since having their children. And this, again, you know, it's this ceremony of closing, of sealing, kind of puts the woman in the center and says, I see you, and I see who you were, and I see what you went through, and I see who you are now and who you could become, and you know, inviting, you know, that person sort of back into a wholeness of self. But it's never too late, ever.
And the wholeness of self, that is what I felt when I experienced that with you. I was feeling on edge before, and afterwards I felt much stronger. And it's hard to do these things justice in words, really.
Yeah, no, totally.
It changed for me, and for anyone listening who's curious and wondering, it is so hard to do it justice in words, the profound difference, and it can be so simple and relatively short. Just change the dialogue, change the energy, change what's going on for you, and it's a hugely missing part of our society, I think. And you do this professionally, and I know that some people listening might choose to hire someone like you. There are benefits to hiring somebody to facilitate that.
Yeah,
and
sure.
It can also be done just with your friends. You could do it informally in different ways, but there's certainly a benefit to.
Yeah, and I mean, I love.
Yeah, go on.
I do love to facilitate it, but yeah, you know, my absolute dream would be that rather than, you know, me getting paid to come and do it, that women would, you know, claim back this stuff and kind of go, actually, yeah, I'm going to get, you know, 2 or 3 of my closest friends and come and do something with me, and for women to find, you know, an inner knowing and a remembering of this stuff, because I think on some level, you know, we do all have a grain of knowing what we need within ourselves, but we, again, it's that space thing. We don't give ourselves the space. We don't quite believe in our own knowing about what we need, and you know, then, you know, they bump into somebody like you or me, and you know, you get into conversation and they're kind of like, oh, that's what I need. But that we were in a world where, you know, I didn't kind of need to do my job in a way, because women would know and would be empowered to do it for themselves and do it for each other, and it just to be an automatic part of what we do for each other as women, you know, in these times. And I, you know, I like to hope and believe that was how it once was, when we lived more tribally and more in the village and had, you know, people around us, you know, and before, you know, sort of more industrial times, and you know, we were all living at 100 miles an hour under electric light. You know, it's we have changed as a being and as a culture and as a society so much in the last sort of few hundred years, and I think that sense of gap and loss that we've talked about is because of that. It's that, you know, somewhere within we know that you know, that there should be some other thing going on, that there should be something else, but the world is, you know, is running over the top of us, just saying do, live faster all the time, and that's what creates that unease and that unsettledness and that uncertainty, because what's going on in here is at odds with what's going on here.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's really well put, and I love that. And I'm thinking, we've spoken a lot about identity, really, and I would invite anybody listening to really listen inside and not to the outside world for a moment, and listen and see, what do I need, and really be open minded to what we're discussing here, because there may be some people going, oh, that's not me, that's, you know, some people think this is a bit strange, or because it's different, it's new, and that can be scary because we don't really know. But it's really simple. It's just coming back to you and honouring you, seeing you, hearing you, like you said. And I like to pick up some of the disconnect. We've mentioned disconnect a few times from ourselves, and I wondered whether you might speak a bit. I know you work a lot with the land, and I wonder if some of our disconnect is partly reflecting a disconnect with the land and the energy of the land, which is often seen as mother energy in the earth as well. And I wonder what your experience is with that, and how that can be supportive for women to consider the land as well.
Yeah, definitely, and it connects with what I just said about sort of you know, the change in our society and our culture. You know, industrial times, from, you know, we moved from being you know, a land-based culture. We lived on the land. We, you know, grew our own vegetables and herbs often in our own gardens, or worked on, you know, local farms together in community. It was, you know, it was very much done you know, en masse. You know, it wasn't, you know, because like now farms are like one man and his vehicles. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not how we lived. We lived within the seasons. You know, really, you know, feeling and listening for what was going on, you know, with the land and with the weather, and whether we were getting you know, signs from the land that it was time to put the seeds in yet, or whether it's time to harvest yet. We worked with the moon a lot with that as well, of sort of you know, before we had, you know, kind of calendars and clocks, you know, our days ran on, you know, sunrise and sunset, moonrise and moonset, and and how the moon, you know, carved, you know, the month for us. And in, you know, as the years have gone on, and we've installed a fixed calendar and a fixed clock, and then we've invented electric light, that means that, you know, we can be up, you know, 24/7. And then more recently, you know, computers and the internet, which, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying these aren't good and useful things in their way, because they are. And things like childbirth, you know, it means now women can, you know, birth safely in the middle of the night, because we've got technology that we didn't have, you know, way back when. But we've gone so far away from, you know, living within, you know, the natural cycles, and into this very fast artificial life that there's this disconnect. And you know, we know that people suffer a lot from what's called SAD, seasonal affective disorder, which, you know, for most people is understood as you know, us as human beings not coping with the winter, with the dark, with the, you know, the less of light, and you know, the shorter days, and it's, you know, the colder weather. And we forget that, you know, not really that long ago, that come the winter time, we wouldn't have still been out and doing 9 to 5 and you know, living you know, all through the winter with lights on all the time. We would have, you know, lived within, you know, the daylight day. And then once it was getting dark, you went indoors and you got around the fire, and you did, you know, your crafting and your sewing and your gentler things and your storytelling, and your being in connection with each other, because it was the time to rest. Because once the spring came and it was time to be getting out there, preparing the land and planting, and then, you know, looking after you know, the land through the spring and summer, and then, you know, the harvest time was really full on. So you're going to fall into winter absolutely knackered, because you've just worked like Billy-O for several weeks, because, you know, you've got to go with the weather, and it's got to come in when it can come in. You know, we've forgotten that the winter should be the time when we are quieter and slower and doing less. But because of the way we've restructured society, and the way that we work and light and everything, we just keep going, and we keep going, and we keep going, and we wonder why we're all stressed out and completely exhausted, and not putting ourselves first.
Exhausted because you've got a lot extra going on.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we are doing more in winter than we are biologically really sort of programmed for. And for me, you know, one of the ways I manage that is I do try and, you know, acknowledge the time of year. But I mean, like anybody, you know, I do have to work, I do have bills to pay, and I've got 4 kids that, you know, have to, you know, do all the things that they do. but I try and make sure I get outdoors at least once a week, and go and walk the land, walk with trees, be by water. Try and pay attention to, you know, what the moon is doing. Where are we in the moon cycle? And I won't go into it here because it's probably another whole interview conversation, is stuff about how you can live and work with the moon. But, you know, just trying to notice those little things, trying to notice how the air feels and how the air smells, and you know, how the light is expanding, and all these things, and just trying to honor a little bit how that makes me feel and what that's doing to my energy, and what does that mean I feel capable of doing today or this week, or what have you. And I really notice it if I don't do that now. Like if I don't get out into the woods or the trees. It happened a couple of months ago. I this one week, and I felt awful. I felt absolutely wretched, really, really low energy, low mood. And I stopped and I went, oh, I haven't been outside in like 2 weeks. I've been so busy, stuck in the house on the computer working and running around after the children, and you know, just all the doing. And I'd completely missed making space to go out and be with the land, and paying attention to what was, you know, going on. And I felt wretched. So having noticed it, the next day, off I went. I thought, all right, put the diary to one side. I went and I felt better. And, you know, and there's going to be people that are going to be like, oh, well, that's, yeah, it's woo-woo and it's weird and what not. But try it, you know, before you knock it.
Yeah, and people are always saying, there's lots of articles around, again, it's easy to see with our kids, there's lots of articles around saying get the kids outdoors playing more and so on, and it applies to us. And I think, again, picking up on what you said, we are animals and we forget that. So the other animals are regulated by the moon and the sun that we see all around. So with the trees, otherwise we wouldn't have them falling off in winter and growing again in spring. We are still affected by that, but then we're skewed by our artificial lifestyle. And I agree that a simple thing like just looking at the trees, walking outside, even if you're stuck in an office, looking at the trees outside the window, but taking time in your lunch hour, whatever, however simple these small steps to reconnect, it slows you down. I always find it slows me down back into a rhythm that's more natural. And in pregnancy, we really need that natural rhythm. We have got so much extra going on, it uses more energy. We need to be regenerated by slowing down, resting, and the energy from the land, the energy from nature can really support us to feel energized, and feeling the cyclical rhythm of pregnancy and labor itself. It's echoed everywhere in the natural world, and like you said, the artificial world is very different, and when we try and fit into that, things aren't as smooth. And like you said, the labor might be hard still, but if it's in flow, in a cycle, and you're used to the cyclical nature, that can make things more smooth, I think. So yeah. And well, I know we could talk for absolutely ever, so I should probably bring it to a little bit of a close. And we've covered most of the questions, I think. So if you had any tips for women, or something that you would like to leave with that a woman could take away, what would be the thing that you would like someone to take away from this that could really make a difference?
I think I would really want to encourage women to listen to themselves. You know, to listen inside, you know, especially again, you know, in these days of sort of Facebook and the internet, there is an absolute plethora of noise, you know, information and images and videos and just noise kind of coming at us all the time as human beings. And as soon as you kind of, something like, you know, becoming pregnant, like, you know, like it like ramps up, you know, it goes up another level. And I know there's a desire to want to, you know, to gather information and absorb and learn and you know, understand what's kind of going on. But I think it can become overwhelming. There's a lot of conflicting information, and there's a lot of bad information too. And also it becomes very easy to listen to lots of other people, and again, you know, to get a lot of, you know, conflicting thoughts and opinions and ideas and stories and whatnot. And actually, I think, you know, the best thing anybody can do, whether you know, whether you're pregnant or not, just just as a being, but definitely if you're pregnant, is actually to close some of that out, and to listen to what's kind of going on, you know, within yourself, and hearing the things that are rising within you, and not just sort of squash them back or tell yourself you're being stupid, or that, you know, your fears aren't real, or, you know, anything like that. You know, allow whatever is rising within you, hear it, honor it. Maybe if you need to, you know, find somebody like us that you could, you know, explore it with, and we have many colleagues countrywide who do variations on what we do, you know, and if I can't help, or Charlotte can't help, I'm sure both of us probably know people we can pass people on to. But yeah, just coming back into a place of trusting ourselves as our own best sort of witness, and our own best, you know, we know ourselves best.
Yeah.
And when we allow ourselves to trust that, rather than trusting all the out here, I think, you know, we things tend to flow more easily. Things tend to make more sense. I think, you know, we become very confused and uncertain when we allow too much of this.
Yeah,
so yeah.
come back to ourselves, making that space and time to hear your own voice, because it's there, right? It's
Totally.
we just conditioned to not take the time, or not to think we know, and just listen back. That's good, really lovely advice. Thank you for that. So as you said, we've got lots of conversations we could have. We've barely begun to touch on many, but perhaps for this interview we'd leave it there, and I will place a summary to help people see what the wonderful, there's a lot in this interview, I think, already for people to digest if they just took even just that last bit you've said about listening to yourself. If people really took that in and really listened to what their heart's desires were telling them, what their impulses were telling them, and took action on that, that would be amazing just in itself. So I really hope that people listening here have got some wonderful things to take away and support themselves for more amazing stories that we'll be hearing in the future as women rise up and speak and ask for what they need. And so thank you, Awen, for taking the time out of your busy day today to chat to me. I've really enjoyed
It's a pleasure.
chatting.
Thank you for having me.
It's really lovely, wonderful to speak to you about these subjects, and hopefully we'll have more chats soon. So thank you.
Thank you.
Pressing the stop button. So goodbye, everybody, and thank you.